Today on Pimp My Habitat we have a pronghorn exhibit that's suffering from subsidence. The less that's said about this wooden erection, the better.
Demonetized.
And what's with the pilgrimage up this cliff face every time they want to drink a water? Have we found the pronghorn fountain of youth? Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Pimp My Habitat, the first Pimp My Habitat of the full release of the game. We did a few of these over in beta, had an absolute blast, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for them again, so here we are diving into our first one today, which comes courtesy of Royville, I believe the name is. Thank you so much for your submission. It is a pronghorn antelope enclosure, although pronghorns aren't actually antelopes, but that's kind of what we call them. She or they say that this is by far the worst looking exhibit in my zoo, while that's why I sent it into Geekism's Pimp My Habitat. I want to make it look like part of a large forest in my zoo with a realistic theme, but I was limited by the pronghorn's needs. I don't want any water in it because it wouldn't fit geographically with the rest of the forest. It also goes on to talk about the building structure here that we've got in the back. Ignore these ones, they're just to keep the thing running, but this white one here, I was going to say a shelter in the Bavarian style meant as a small house in the Alps. So, a little bit to think about here. First of all, pronghorns are North American animals, but they want a Bavarian theme. That's cool. We'll go with that. The whole point of Pimp My Habitat is to take what's already there and improve it, not completely rip it out. So, Bavarian building, I'm good for that. I love the idea of it being in a forest. Again, pronghorn antelope aren't really forest animals, but that's what you want. We'll try and make it work. So let's first of all jump in and have a look at some of the specifics. Welfare looks pretty great. So it looks like we've got everything just right here. Terrain distribution's all spot on. There's plenty of room for them. We've got a herd of about 6 or 7 in here, a male, and about 4 or 5 females. They have plenty of hard shelter. Whether they need it or not, I don't know. Let's just try deleting that and having a look. Yes, they do need hard shelter, and that is enough, so that's good to know. Terrain paints and all that are fine. Environment, actually they could have a lot more coverage now. That may have changed. I have a feeling this one might have actually been put in during the beta, to be honest. Again, if you would like your habitat to become part of Pimp My Habitat, all you have to do is put it onto the workshop with the hashtag Pimp My Habitat in the title or the description, and jot a little bit down in the description about what you're looking for, what you'd like to improve, what you think's good, what you think's bad, etc, etc. So I think, yeah, coverage may have changed here, which means we can do a lot more foliage, but we definitely are using the right stuff. Everything's good there. Do you know what? So technically these animals will be more than happy. So I think the main things we need to think about here are the viewing area. This big lump of glass here is a little dull to look at. Definitely think we could do something there. And this building, it doesn't say Bavarian to me, if I'm totally honest. I definitely think you've got a bit of a thing going on with the sort of plaster and the wooden logs, but I definitely think we can Bavarian-ish this up a little bit, so let's dive in. So first things first, we need to do something about this building. It's a really good attempt, to be honest with you, and if you're not familiar with the Planet Coaster build system, you know, things like this are going to slip you up early on. And also, like I said, I think this one was built in the beta, which is another reason why we're a little bit limited in the parts that we got, but the idea of a Bavarian building is great. Like I say, it doesn't really fit pronghorns, but that's not really for me to say. If you want a Bavarian building, let's do a Bavarian building. And you've kind of got the core features right, which is lots of white plaster walls and lots of wood. So really, that's all we're doing. I'm changing out the bottom ground there from breeze block to some of the rough brick, which again I'm pretty sure is something we didn't have during the beta. So otherwise, we're definitely going to be using the rough brick there. It's much more suitable for what we're trying to build. And then the core features really of Bavarian buildings. Then, if you've got these real big sort of peak mansard roof, well, not mansard really, but you know, this sort of peak style roofing that we're going to get in quite early, and then we have to get a lot of overhang with those as well. So we're doing some extra builds there to get some overhang, getting rid of one of those trees, and then again, as the original building showed, a lot of the detail of Bavarian buildings is wooden, timber, wooden structures, similar a little little bit in style to maybe some Tudor buildings, I guess, as well, but lots more sort of bare wood as opposed to Tudor wood often being painted black. So we're going to be using the standard Planco beams here. One of my favourite Plan Zoo beams here. One of my favourite pieces in the game. Very versatile, and even though they're not recolorable, it's just a really nice plain wood texture. You can use these everywhere. They can be modern, they can be a little bit more rustic, which is like we're doing here, and just very, very useful pieces. You can use them a lot, really get some good use out of them. So really here then, yeah, Bavarian building, lots of wood, lots of struts, lots of crosses, things like that. As far as the actual exhibit goes, there isn't really that much we have to change. Like I said, as far as the animals are concerned, the terrain's correct, the foliage is correct. So all we're really doing here is changing some of the stuff aesthetically, really to please the guests more than the animals, which is something we spoke about a little bit on the channel before, this idea that zoos kind of have this double standard when it comes to design, and first and foremost the animals' welfare is important, but then afterwards you have to make sure that the place looks good as far as guests are concerned, because, you know, at the end of the day they're coming in, they're paying money, they want to see animals in nice habitats, and not just for a look point of view. You know, if a guest sees an animal in a clean, tidy, interesting habitat, they're going to be more they're going to believe more that the animal is kept well, whereas really those two things don't necessarily cohabit. I'm sure there are animals kept in places that don't look fantastically themed, yet are still kept very well, and there's probably places where they have really amazing theming and the animals aren't kept as well, you know, and the two things are quite separate. But I do think it's an interesting sort of juxtaposition, the idea of the building's got to look good as far as the guests are concerned, as well as ticking all the sort of animal welfare boxes. We're covering up a little bit the interior here. I think if I was to build this myself, I would probably use some null fencing here and maybe try and work in the habitat door with the building better. But one thing I always try and do with these Pimp My Habitat builds is to not change the floor plan of the structures, because the idea is that people can take these back once they're done and place them into their park, and they've got a habitat that's been tweaked a little bit. So I think, yes, if I was doing this myself completely, I would probably change the habitat exterior there a little bit. But as it is, we're going to leave it as it is. The only real changes we're making here with the terrain is just smoothing it out a little. I like the variation in height, but I think it was just a little too extreme. So we've toned that down a little bit. And then we're just breaking up again some of those sort of extreme height variations there with some rock work that's sort of showing itself out. We're going to get some water on the indoors with the pipe, so we know we've always got some water coming in, even if the keepers aren't maybe being too hot. But we also place one outdoors and then the food down at the front. Try to use the rocks there to give it a little bit of coverage, as then we go back into the foliage here. Again, using North American foliage, we've got lots of lovely sort of oaks and maples and all that kind of thing. And the original remit was to make it look sort of foresty, but you've still got to try and make sure you've got some areas where the animals can actually be seen. You could actually place some more trees down in here if you want to. So if you wanted to, you can put some more heavy foliage in, but you've got to make sure that the animals have got some room to move around with, especially with pronghorns. Really, they're a plains animal. They need lots of room, really. So I've tried to keep that entrance, that sort of middle place, completely open, so there's plenty of room for them. But then also kind of give the idea of a forest by keeping the low shrubbery here really quite dense, and then also lots of trees around the air sort of exterior of the habitat, so that as you're sort of looking into it from a guest point of view, there's lots of tree stuff to see there. And you'll see that I keep coming down to this glass area here because sight lines are important. That was the other thing that we had with the original one there, is that building, the original building, was covered up by loads of trees, and really you want to have some of that out in the open if it's something that you're going to be able to see. The only thing that I did with the terrain, as far as the game was concerned, the terrain was perfect. I just made the main thoroughfare there a little bit more dirt as opposed to grass, because obviously the animals are going to be coming and going a lot and wearing away the grass. Now, this one little bit of log that was hanging out here, I'm going to guess that this piece of log was actually part of an archway or something, and has just got included in the blueprint because the blueprint kind of takes in anything that's touching the habitat walls, basically. I'm assuming that's what's happened. I know we had a little joke about it at the beginning, but I thought, you know what, it's there, let's use it as a sort of stepping off point to create a viewing area here for the guests. So again, this is one thing I've really noticed in a lot of zoos now, is they very rarely just have open viewing areas like this. They very often have these sort of covered areas. One, I assume it's a weather thing, you know, even in bad weather you can still come under here and see the animals, but also I just think it makes it a little bit more enclosed and a little bit more like you're stepping into the animals area and you're stepping in and sort of sneaking a look of the animal. I think that sort of thing really helps out. So that's the speed build done. I think it's turned out really quite well. The building is definitely with a Bavarian vibe. Obviously, you can go into a lot more detail with this, but I think it turned out pretty nicely. You can see that little chapess looks fantastic there on the rock. She's enjoying herself. Lots of areas for the pronghorns to move around, but you've still got that sort of foresty feel that was definitely one of the main things. So if you have your own habitat that you would like me to pimp, make sure you chuck it onto the workshop with the hashtag Pimp My Habitat. Hopefully we'll get to it in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, be good.